Are you one of the Question, are you one of the freaks? One of the 0.52% of your mobility and also your diet? Uh-oh, sorry, Dory. It was shit anyway. Are you one of the freaks? Are you one of the 0.52% of people who do the following? So this report I've created estimates the percentage of adults in the Western world who consistently engage in what I've categorized as 6 specific fitness and dietary behaviors. Now, I've said this is the Western world because we are lucky enough in the Western world to have access to things like gyms and have gym memberships, whereas most of the people on the planet don't have access to this. So I'm only using this as Western world statistics. A little while ago, this report would have been almost impossible for me to create, but I've managed to do this with the help of my friend Grok. Because I'm taking 6 different but related fields and trying to whittle the way down to a single percentage. And I think the numbers are quite robust. There will probably be errors in there, but I think it gives a good sense of the percentages involved. Now, the 6 different categories I'm looking at are things that most of us do. It's a question of consistency. Going to the gym, how often you go to the gym, what you do when you're in the gym, what kind of lifts you're doing, what kind of diet you have to support the things you do in the gym, and your general activity levels. When you add all these things together, you find that there are lots of people who are good at certain things but are woefully poor at other things. And it's not until you bring them all together that you realize just how small a percentage do all of those things consistently over probably an average of 6 months. So let's go through the individual categories and I'll go through the breakdown. So for the rest of this, I'm going to be jutting my eye down to my laptop to refer to my own notes on this one. So let's start off with number 1, which is gym attendance. Now for this, I've categorized it as what you really need to be doing is around about 3 times a week lifting weights. So if we look at the statistics of gym memberships or home weightlifting, because that counts as well, we're looking at around about membership globally in the Western world of around about 112.5 million adult gym memberships. 64 in the USA, Canada, going through the UK. Now, the question is what is the attendance of that gym membership? And you can see that attendance is 40% of those members who have those gym memberships attend the gym 3 or more times per week. So that's according to IHRSA, which is one of the top industry stat providers. That gives us only 8.7% of adults meet that first criteria. You might have a gym membership, but do you use the gym membership for really where the rubber meets the road, where results start happening, is 3 times a week. So that only gives us 8.7% of those people. So the next one is the key one, really, is that what you do when you get there, because you can have that membership. Again, there's only 8.7% of people attend the gym, but we know for a fact that when people go to the gym, a lot of people don't really work very hard. I can see it in any gym I've ever been to that's more of a commercial gym, isn't a specialist gym, is most of the people there are just going through the motions. They don't really work very hard. So that goes down to now, right, do you lift weights 3 times a week? That's really where you need to be to get results. So if we look at the statistics on that, 35% of the 50 million adult gym goers or home lifters focus on weightlifting 3 times a week. So based on US data, where 31.7% engage in muscle strengthening twice weekly, this yields around about 17.5 million people, or 3% of that total. And again, there's obviously going to be variations in these statistics. Some say it will be 40 million people, some say it'll be 50 million people, but everything will balance out by the end. So we're already down from 8.7 down to around about 3% of the adults use the gym regularly over 6 months, 3 times a week to lift weights. What about steps? I've been quite generous on this one. I've made 8,000 to 10,000 steps because, after all, steps aren't the be-all and end-all, but they're an indicator of your general overall activity level. And the more active you are, generally, the better it is. So let's go over those stats. So roughly 15 to 20% of adults achieve 8,000 to 10,000 steps daily. So that's Among the 17.5 million weightlifters, that's 80% meet this yielding target. So that's 14 million people, or 2.4% of the adult. And that kind of makes sense because you assume that people who go to the gym are naturally more active. So that's an assumption that active individuals combine gym sessions with daily movements. Next one, we have reaching 80% of your max heart rate. That's twice a week. Now that can be done in weight training sessions if the weight training sessions are intense. They can also be done in high intensity individual sessions. So that might be you do 3 times a week weights, maybe you're having a HIIT session, maybe you're weightlifting and HIIT sessions are a combination. So if you look at the statistics on this one, that's 10 to 15% of adults engage in vigorous exercise. So among the 40 million, 70% achieve that 80% max heart rate. That's via cardio or HIIT. So that yields around about 9.8 million, or 1.7% of adults. Next, we move on to mobility and flexibility. I think this is one that catches a lot of people out. People go to the gym, they like to lift things. For me personally, I hate stretching, but it's something I have to do and I incorporate into my routines. I force myself to do it. But it's one of the things I think a lot of people, unless they're going down that yoga route, find very easy to ignore. And that's where you start whittling down these numbers even further, because we drop people from that first group of numbers because, you know what, you caught me on a stretch and I just don't do it. So if we look at statistics about stretching, it says 10 to 20% of adults practice yoga or similar. So among the 9.8 million, that's 60% perform mobility work, yielding around about 5.9 million, or 1% of adults. So again, numbers are whittled down. It doesn't have to be yoga, but it could be some kind of stretching routine. The statistic might be a little bit off there because it might be leaning towards more that direct yoga thing. If you do supersets, for example, of bench presses with a stretch in the middle, that to me counts because you'll be doing that multiple times a week. Next, we have, again, probably the biggest thing is diet. This is where I feel that most people really go off the rails. And I'm talking about not just on one weekend, that's fine. I'm talking about consistently over on that roughly 6-month period. When it comes to eating a nutrient-dense, moderate to high protein diet, protein often really catches people out. So data says that 5 to 15% of adults follow a nutrient-dense, high-protein, low-glycemic index diet. So among the 5.9 million, it's less than 50% adhere consistently, yielding around about less than 3 million, or 0.52% of adults. So this is where we get the final estimate from. So if you look at that last kind of overall view, we've got the gym stroke home workout. That's 8.7%, roughly 50 million people. Then if we go to lifting weights and doing it well while you're there, that takes us down to around about 3%, which makes the number 17.5 million. Steps, 2.4%, now we're down to 14. 80% max heart rate, 1.7% of people get there, which leaves us with now 9.8. Mobility and flexibility, only 1%, leaves us 5.9 people. And then finally the diet leaves us around about 0.52 percentage points left, which means you're only on around about number of adults, 3 million. Question is, are you in that 0.52%? Do you think you're almost in that 5.2% if you're not quite there? What could you do to get yourself into that 5.2%? Because at the end of the day, it's all about consistency. It's not about month challenges and weight loss targets and, I'm going to blast myself for a month and I'm going to eat whatever the fuck I want. No, it's about consistency and constantly keeping yourself in that healthy range. And unfortunately, as you can see, those 6 different kind of categories create a lot of work and a lot of program adherence that you have to be really on top of to make sure you stay there. Now, you can obviously achieve health and fitness goals without some of those things. Like, for example, when it comes to steps, you don't have to get 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day to be healthy, because the biggest thing really is lifting weights and getting your heart rate up. But it does go a long way, especially if your diet isn't very good. If your diet is really good and you're automatically in that percentage, then there's less of an emphasis on those steps. But all of these things together combine to make a really strong package that kind of bulletproof you from every different angle. So that's the ultimate message: is do your best, try and tick as many of those boxes as you can, and be honest with yourself. Look at that list and think, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do this? Do this? What are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? What do I need to tweak to get me where I need to be?